This is the Advanced Brain Podcast with third-generation neurotechnology pioneer, entrepreneur, best-selling author, music producer, keynote and TEDx speaker, Alex Doman. Improve your mental wellness as Alex sits down with the leading thought leaders of our time about how to optimize your brain, body, and life with the latest and most powerful tools to help you reach your unlimited potential. This episode was previously recorded and released as part of the Sound Brain Fitness series and is being re-released here in the Advanced Brain Podcast. Now, listen in and discover how to become the best version of yourself with Alex Doman.
This is Alex Doman. So tonight's guest, I'm thrilled to have Bruce Cryer. He is the Global Director of HeartMath Healthcare, founding director of HeartMath UK and HeartMath South Africa, and co-founder with Gary Malkin of What Makes Your Heart Sing. For 11 years, Bruce was CEO of HeartMath USA, an innovative research-based firm offering scientifically validated products and award-winning technology to boost performance, productivity, and health while reducing stress. Bruce's clients include Kaiser Permanente, the Mayo Clinic, Stanford University, the National Health Service in the UK, Hewlett-Packard, NASA, Boeing, L'Oreal, and the Samueli Institute. He's the co-author of the book From Chaos to Coherence, The Power to Change Performance, and a Harvard Business Review article, Pull the Plug on Stress. Bruce has been a faculty member of the Stanford Executive Program since 1997 and was named a top 50 thought leader in personal excellence. He has been interviewed for or written in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Inc. magazine, Fast Company, Modern Healthcare, Leadership Excellence, and medical journals such as Stress Medicine, as well as many other business and health publications. A series of major health challenges convinced Bruce to transition to a variety of new roles more closely matching his passions. A former actor, singer, dancer on Broadway, he has even revived his singing and dancing skills as a keynote performer, helping audiences align your work with what is most alive and inspired in your heart. So as you can all tell, Bruce is a very dynamic individual with a lot to offer, and I want to tell you a little bit about tonight's call and what he has to share with us. So tonight's call is What Makes Your Heart Sing? Essential Catalyst for an Inspired Life. And what makes your heart sing is a question many people around the world are asking themselves to find inspiration, meaning, purpose, and alignment with their soul's passion for life. Are you doing enough of what inspires you? And if not, what's getting in the way? So tonight you're going to hear Bruce's uplifting story, and we're going to cover a number of things, including what awakened the power of inspiration in Bruce's life. So tonight we'll be exploring how to identify sources of inspiration that are essential for optimal performance and creativity, how to develop a deeper sense of presence and kindness for yourself and others, how to understand and appreciate new reasons for creating balance and passion in your life, developing the skills for personal resilience, and how to be inspired to bring music and the arts into your personal life and your professional environment. Bruce, it is really my very distinct pleasure to have you on this evening's call. I know our listeners are very excited to have you join us as well. I know you've got a lot of powerful information to share, so why don't you go ahead and delve into this inspirational discussion?
Thank you so much, Alex. What a treat to be here. It's really an honor and a delight. And feel free to jump in to interrupt me and to ask questions or make comments as you wish. I would love to have a dialogue as part of the format tonight.
You bet, Bruce.
Yeah, what a great introduction. Sometimes I hear that bio and I think, is that my father? Who are they talking about? I can't quite remember having done all that stuff. But thank you for a very, very warm and gracious introduction. Well, this tonight is definitely about inspiration, and it's something that has kind of risen to the top of my priority list in recent years, and for a variety of reasons that I'll share with you now. And because this has been introduced first about kind of my story, I thought, well, I ought to give you at least a little bit of the detail of how the last few years have gone, and kind of how my love affair with music and the arts and inspiration, and how that's translated into business in various ways has unfolded over the last number of years. I was a very lucky boy with two parents, both of whom were very culturally aware and sensitive. My father was a singer who mostly sang in church choirs, but was thrilled when his youngest son, me, showed an interest in singing in school. My mother was an artist, also did the costumes for this high school where she worked. So there was sort of music and theater around me growing up, and one of the greatest gifts my father gave me was the gift of being inspired by music. Many a Sunday I would watch him sitting in his favorite lounge chair in the living room, listening to some great symphony, a Mahler symphony or Beethoven or Brahms or some amazing aria from an opera, and he'd be conducting. And I didn't know that all fathers didn't sit there on Sunday afternoons conducting the great orchestras of the world, but he was. And oftentimes I'd see tears streaming down his face. He was so absorbed in the sheer majesty and inspiration of the music. And while I wasn't always inspired by the same types of music he was, that feeling for music and for what can uplift our spirit beyond the mundane and beyond the tragic and the tough situations in our life, that was a gift that I am so eternally grateful to him for having gotten. And so through my young years, I like most boys, I was mostly a kid into sports, really, and school. I liked to do well in school. And music was in the background, but it came to the foreground as I was about to leave my high school years, and somebody thought that I might have some singing talent and decided to give me the lead in the high school musical, and without an audition. And not only did I enjoy it and find I had some amount of the talent, but 2 years later, I found myself with the lead role in the world's longest-running musical, a show called The Fantastics. And it had been 2 years of high-speed indoctrination and learning in the world of music and musical theater and singing and dancing and all kinds of things. And I kind of looked at myself at one point sitting there in my apartment in New York playing the lead role in this legendary musical and thinking, how did this happen? How did I get here? This is, I didn't plan this. I didn't aspire to be an actor as a kid, but somehow it happened. And I was a very inspiring career, and I didn't do it a super long time, because after about 5 years of working in the theater and doing television commercials and all the things that young actors need to do to survive in a place like New York City, slowly the realization dawned on me that my life was meant to do something more than just entertain. And I love entertainment, and I love to be able to be entertaining to others. And yet, for me, I felt like there was a lot I needed to learn about life myself, and a lot I needed to grow into. And maybe one day I could teach others or share what I'd learned with others. But I felt that by age about 24 or 25, that the life of an entertainer in New York was really not the life I wanted. And I came west to California, where I've been ever since, and got involved in a number of fields, all related to kind of health and wellness and personal development, personal growth. And all through the late 70s and 80s, that was my love, that was my passion. And I found lots of inspiration in various spiritual practices and learning things about diet and nutrition, and getting pretty fluent in various types of exercise too, having learned Tai Chi and yoga and things like this. A fortuitous meeting in 1980 led 10 years later, in 1990, to a long-lasting association with a man named Doc Childrey. Those of you in the audience that have heard of the organizations called HeartMath know the name Doc Childrey because he is the founder. And I was very fortunate to be part of the founding group of HeartMath way back in 1990. And for those of you who are not familiar with HeartMath, HeartMath began as a nonprofit research organization in 1990, 1991, founded to, first of all, understand the mechanisms inside us as human beings of why stress can make us stupid, why stress can lead to all kinds of health challenges early in life, let alone later in life, why stress can block us, certainly from our passion and often from our inspiration as well. And one of the goals of HeartMath was to use mainstream scientific methods to both understand the pathways of how our human system is affected, but more importantly, how we can change that picture, how we can transform the stress that we have into feelings of resilience, into more balance, into more well-being. And so HeartMath, for the last 22, 23 years now, has developed not only a very elegant and simple set of tools that can be used by children, people who are retired, soldiers, students, athletes, business people, nurses, you name it. If we're human, pretty much we can use these. But also it's become known for the innovative technologies HeartMath has developed around stress reduction and performance enhancement. And I'm very proud to have been part of a lot of that development over the years. And as the years went on, as part of the executive team, I've been involved developing the programs that I've delivered on 4 continents, and part of the team that was looking at how we could create technology that would boost people's ability to not only lower their stress but also increase their fulfillment and their well-being. And little did I know that a few years later, my own ability to reduce stress and boost my resilience would be tested. and I'll fast forward to that period of my life. In late 2009, I was diagnosed with the C word, cancer, and fortunately it was a relatively positive diagnosis or prognosis. They believed it was an intact tumor that could be removed surgically and wouldn't, probably assumed it had not spread, and indeed that was the case. So I had surgery and it was removed, and I began a series of treatments. Unfortunately, the treatments were somewhat problematic, and I started developing infections, staph infections, and that got serious when it got into my blood, and that's now considered life-threatening, so I was hospitalized for that. And fortunately, after some months of further treatment, the staph infections faded into the background, and they weren't happening anymore. But meanwhile, partly because I had danced a lot as a young man, and I had done a lot of running on roads as an older man, my hips began to give me significant problems, a lot of chronic pain, and turned out to be arthritis. And finally, an earlier diagnosis that I, at some point, as I got older, would need to have my hips replaced began to accelerate, and I finally recognized that really all the other things I had tried to reduce the pain and live a healthy life were not really working, and I needed to go ahead and have both hips replaced. So I did that, not at the same time, but 3 months apart. So by summer of 2011, having gone through surgery for cancer, treatments that became problematic, and then the replacement of both of my hips, it had been a pretty significant time of health challenges, in the middle of which my mother passed away. And so it was a challenging time where I often had times on my back recovering from something or about to have a treatment or a surgery or something, and much, much, much time to reflect. And interestingly, one of the marketing advisors to HeartMath a number of years ago suggested a tagline for us: "A change of heart changes everything." And we adopted that, and it's been part of how we've kind of run our business and met the world for many years now. And here I was realizing I needed to make some changes, that this series of health events were shaking to my stability, to say the least. The loss of my mother was as well. But I realized there was another part of me that had lost some inspiration and needed to find it again. And so a very challenging time followed where I realized I really needed to make some changes and wanted to maintain a role with HeartMath, even more of a global role, but not having to be carrying the mantle as the CEO, which I had done for the previous 11 years. And so I moved into a new direction and did more work around healthcare and began to work more globally, and especially working in the UK and in South Africa, where new businesses around HeartMath have been born in the last couple of years. And so that was all proceeding, and then a fortuitous circumstance happened. And one day I was going to Washington, D.C. to visit my brother, who's a physician there, and I'm very close to him. And he told me he was going to see a Christmas concert at the Kennedy Center, and Christmas carols, and you could sing along. And I thought, I don't normally like this kind of thing, but why not? I'm kind of in a new phase of my life. I'm going to open myself to life now and try some new things. And long story short, it was a life-changing experience. I realized I needed to sing. There was something unfulfilled, unexpressed in my heart and through my voice that I wanted to somehow do. I had no idea how I would do it yet. But I am a lucky man, because 40 years earlier, in college, I had a roommate who went on to great success as a composer, and that man is Gary Malkin, who is now my partner in this venture called What Makes Your Heart Sing. And I contacted Gary and through a text message and basically said, Gary, exclamation point, exclamation point. I've had a life-changing experience at the Kennedy Center, exclamation point, exclamation point. I've got to sing, exclamation point, exclamation point. So we got together and started working together on weekends just for fun. It was two old friends from college hanging out and getting to know each other again and learning about our lives and our ups and our downs and our successes and our failures and our joys and our tragedies, and really having a great time reconnecting two old buddies. But also playing music together. And Gary, to give some context, has won multiple Emmys, multiple Clio Awards for his film scores, his TV scores, his commercial work, all kinds of things. And he had an amazing body of work that I really hadn't realized he'd been doing all this, how much he had done. And as we began to talk and compare notes over what turned into a series of weekends of kind of hanging out and playing around with music and inspiration together, we began to realize that there was something we were developing, kind of a working relationship that seemed like this could be inspiring to others, that our own stories of how we'd overcome some challenging situations could be helpful to others, let alone the fact that we loved music as a way of inspiring ourselves and others. And we were very lucky to have a very well-known healthcare organization named Kaiser hire us and to do a keynote for one of their conferences, and we did that in June of last year, 2012. And it was an incredibly scary, in one way, experience, because it had been about 35 years since I had last really sung on stage in front of a large audience, but exhilarating, completely exhilarating. And I realized there was this part of me that had been blossoming, and I'd been nurturing it over the previous few years, that was about the arts again, and was about music and about dance and about creativity. And now I was feeling better. Now I was healed from the hip surgeries, and I was getting stronger again, and I was healed from the trauma of the cancer and the staph infections, and life was looking rosier again. And a lot of exciting things were starting to unfold, and we realized that this question, what makes your heart sing, was one that I had been asking myself. And it was such a universal question, especially at a time in the history of the world when there's so many challenging things going on, so many stressful things going on. And so we began to develop this project called What Makes Your Heart Sing, and I'll pause there in case you would like to ask anything or comment, Alex, before I continue with the story and continue with the audience.
Well, I'm enthralled in this story, and I think back, Bruce, that I hadn't realized that my first introduction to the HeartMath work was really in those foundational years. Through a mutual colleague, we have Terry Patton.
Right.
At the time the HeartMath solution came out, and I've kind of watched the trajectory of this work and been very fascinated with this concept of heart intelligence and the focus on stress reduction and in building resilience. And I ask a question as I hear your story and see the wonderful work and all the lives you've impacted over the years. Do you think that perhaps that was all in preparation for the big C word and this challenge? And whenever I ask you that question,
I think in some kind of level it was. When I left, the parallel to your question is when I left the world of the New York musical theater scene in 1978. But once I left, it felt like that was almost like a dream. Like, did that really happen? And I often, at first, I thought, why did I do that? What was that all about? Because as a kid, I didn't aspire to be a musical theater actor or dancer or any of that stuff. I thought I was very much into social causes and, fighting for peace and civil rights and very socially responsible things, I thought. And I thought I would end up doing stuff like that. And here I was in New York, having a fantastic kind of fantasy life, and it was amazing to me. And yet when it ended and I realized I didn't really want to do this anymore, I thought, well, why did I do this? And then when I was with the biotech and nutrition company in the late 80s, I was doing performances. I was orchestrating people on stage to inspire audiences about nutrition and health and well-being. And I thought, wow, this was so convenient that I had that career because now I can bring those skills into a whole other field. And I think similarly, all the work that I had done both in teaching and helping develop these programs around stress reduction and resilience, but especially the teaching meant that I was practicing all the time. I mean, not a day went by in 20 years that I didn't practice HeartMath tools to get my day started right and to build my own well-being and my own personal balance. And here I was then, starting in 2009 with these series of, as I call them, unfortunate health events, and which really did test me. I mean, the physical challenge of it all is one thing, but the emotional side is a whole nother seminar. Dealing with the inconsistencies of the healthcare system, of the inconsistencies in care from nurse to nurse, from doctor to doctor, inconsistencies in communication, inconsistencies in the insurance plan and what they cover and what they won't cover. There's a whole emotional side of these things that can be far more challenging and agonizing than even the physical discomfort or pain you may be going through. So many a time I thought, wow, thank God I have learned all these tools, because there's nobody else right now that's caring for me, so I better do it myself. I better lower my stress right now because I know better. I know what stress does inside my body and anybody else's body, and I need to follow my own medicine here, at least, even if there's nobody else that's helping me right at this moment. So yeah, it was. I think we could pretty much say that about anything in our life, that it's always preparation for something else later. And I certainly never anticipated in a million years that my life would have that 2-year period that I went through. And I don't wish it on anyone else. And yet, when I was first diagnosed and was told that it was definitely cancer, and we knew this before the surgery. Actually, there was no question that it was cancer based on various factors. I told my doctor, well, okay, one thing's for sure. I'm going to have a story to tell. And I said to myself at that moment that because I'm a public figure to some degree, I speak a lot, I do interviews, I do seminars, I do conferences, etc., I will share elements of my experience in hopes that this can help others. And here we are. Here we are doing that. So yeah, I think it was preparation in certain ways, for sure.
Oh, it's interesting the path we take, and often people say we live a life of by design, but I think the question is whose design.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think for your listeners there, because I noticed in the amazing questions that came in already in advance of the seminar even starting, that a number of the listeners are themselves struggling with health issues. And I know for myself, being inspired when you're dealing with a very uncomfortable treatment week after week is very challenging. Being inspired when you're waiting to get news of the last test you've had, that's very hard to be inspired. So I'm not some idealist running around just saying, let's just be inspired all the time and life will be a perfect little dream for us. Not at all. Nor are Gary and I saying, relative to what makes your heart sing as a principle, we are not saying that what makes your heart sing is just about quitting your job and just doing whatever makes your heart sing. That's not the real world. Many of the people listening are dealing with health problems, or are the caregiver for someone else dealing with health problems, or are in a job that they have to keep doing, because if they don't, how will they support the 2 or 3 kids going through college? We have various choices to make in life, and so the message today is not just forget everything else you're doing and just follow your heart in some idealistic way and just follow what makes your heart sing and everything will be copacetic. Not at all. But we are saying, and I am saying, that I found so many times in that period of the health crisis period that I had I not done things along the way to inspire me in the midst of despair at times. I mean, I was depressed at times, not clinically depressed, not anything like what some people have gone through, but still, there were moments, very dark moments for me, many of them. And yet I could usually bring myself out somehow. And I have to give credit to nature, because when I got my first smartphone that had a camera, I think it was an iPhone, was the first time, and I started taking pictures because I had a friend who loved to see pictures of the area where I live. That inspired me so much, and I found there was an artistry in me that started to come out just in the process of looking at nature through new eyes and then capturing it through a photo. And I found that in 5 minutes of taking photos of flowers sparkling in the sunshine, it kind of gave me this momentary inspiration. It lifted me out of that heaviness that I was feeling. And it didn't solve it all, but it lifted me out for a few moments, gave me perspective, and it helped me realize there's more to life than this challenge that I'm in right now. yes, it's a serious challenge. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. At the same time, it's not all that's going on in life. There is still a gorgeous day outside. There are still flowers. There are still butterflies. There are still beautiful things that are possible to experience, even in the midst of these challenges. So go ahead.
No, please go ahead. No, please finish that thought.
Well, I was just going to say, as Gary and I kind of thought deeper about this question of what makes your heart sing, we kept looking at each other, and then we would kind of throw it out to different people, and often we would find a twinkle in people's eye, like, well, thank you for asking. What makes your heart sing? What a lovely question. And obviously we didn't come up with the phrase. It's been around for who knows how long, hundreds of years maybe. But people often just, wow, thank you, and like delighted to even be asked. And as we, over the last year began to think more, what's our real message? We know how music and the arts especially inspire Gary and inspire me. I love photography now because of my iPhone. I take thousands of pictures because I look at life a little differently and love to capture it when that's possible and appropriate. And but music as well, and dance. There's so many things for me that make life very rich, and increasingly so as I've healed. And we began to think, and I wanted to share some of these for our audience, because we began to ponder, what are the essential, and to the topic of the subtitle of this teleseminar, what are some of the essential catalysts for inspired life? And I'd love to share some of those, Alex, if I could. And,
no, please do. I'm very excited to hear.
Yeah. So, there's no special order here, really. There's no, in a way, this is not unique. Many people for thousands of years have said amazing things about the heart. The prophets, the great religions, the philosophers, the poets, etc. And this is just kind of another take on what it is that makes the heart so valuable, and why following what makes our heart sing can be so important in our life. And I relate a lot of these to my own experience, of course, but the first catalyst, as we call it, we named the power of willingness. And a great quote from Leo Buscaglia: what we call the secret to happiness is no more a secret than the willingness to choose life. And that, it was so true for me. I tell you, when you go through cancer, even though I never really thought it was life-threatening, although they did use that word with me when I had the staph infection, I realized, and I started to come out the other side, I thought, I've had a second chance. Everybody doesn't get a second chance. I definitely have been given a second chance here. I'm going to be more open to life than I was before. I'm going to embrace opportunity differently. I'm going to embrace challenge differently. I'm going to embrace adventure in a new way. And to us, to Gary and me, willingness is the ability to get out of our heads, to open our hearts, and access another wisdom inside of us, a more intuitive wisdom inside of us. And HeartMath's been saying this in different ways for more than 20 years as well. And so to me, it's kind of the place to start. You have to be kind of willing, because it's easy to be depressed and discouraged and feel like, well, stress is always going to be too big for me. My situation's worse. But I think there's an opportunity to kind of crack open the heart a little bit and say, well, why not give it a try? What have I got to lose? Why not be willing to experience a little bit more of life? And that goodness could happen. And I'm trying to say, hey, guys, I've gone through some pretty dark times, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There can be, even in the darkest times, and why not give it a shot? The second catalyst we talked about is the power of playfulness. And a wonderful quote from the very popular pop singer Jason Mraz, who I find a very unique musician and especially songwriter, writes great lyrics, great songs, very thoughtful, very different than the usual pop song. But he had a great quote: "Don't ever let your mind keep you from having a good time." And so playfulness. And this is something that, having been an actor, having been a dancer, I love to make people laugh. I love to, have a kind of a lighthearted take on life and think of funny things to say. And but I think no matter who we are, no matter what our personality is like, being playful kind of loosens the stiffness in our bodies, in our minds, in our hearts. And I know we teed this up in advance, Alex, and I'd love to play this excerpt now for the audience. Gary and I have created a CD called Sonic Sanctuaries. It's guided imagery tracks, and they're based around these first two catalysts, the power of willingness and the power of playfulness. And they're like guided meditations. It's my voice speaking, and Gary, who's this brilliant pianist and composer and musician and just a genius artist, he's playing. And so we thought we'd play a little bit of this one track called The Power of Playfulness, so you can get a feel for what we mean by this in a more playful way than just me talking about it right now. So if we got that teed up to play, let's do that now, Alex.
You got it, Bruce. You got it.
The second theme for bringing the power of inspiration into our lives is playfulness. Being playful arises naturally from the childlike innocence and awesome wonder of being willing, from our flexibility and our ability to flow with life instead of resisting or freezing. Being playful acknowledges the agelessness of our spirit, even though the body may show some wear and tear. Some of the most playful people we've known are those we might call ageless wonders, still with a twinkle in their eye when others grew depressed or bitter. Being playful is not only about a sense of humor, but it is especially about that. And playfulness is the energy that ignites creativity. Not taking life too seriously, not creating needless drama when a situation needs our calm, laughing at ourselves over our limitations and our humanness, and especially remembering no matter how serious a situation may feel, there is someone, perhaps millions, whose situation is considerably worse.
Great, thanks, Alex. Slightly odd hearing my own voice in the child seminar that I'm doing, but thank you for indulging me. I don't know how well your listeners could hear. The production on that CD is really something I'm extremely proud of. Gary won 7 Emmys because he's an exceptional producer as well as composer, and so it's really a lovely piece that we're both really proud of. And so wanted to at least let your audience know that these ideas have become embodied, if you will, in this new CD called Sonic Sanctuaries. So kind of continuing with the themes of these catalysts, the next one, the third one, we talk of as the power of presence. The great Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh talked of your true home is in the here and the now, and you hear a lot about presence. As an actor, you heard as a young actor especially, I heard a lot about certain actors having so much presence, and you couldn't describe what it was, but you just felt them no matter what character they were playing or what scene they were playing. And we also are often inspired by people in life who we also feel, wow, they have so much presence. When you are in their presence, you feel listened to, you feel appreciated, you feel valued, and so the ability to have presence we think of as being as someone who is fully being themselves, where their heart, their mind, their body, their soul are all somehow integrated. And that tends to be inspiring to others as well. And we could go on for hours, and I'm conscious that we want to take questions too, so I want to keep talking about these next few catalysts. But the next one we call the power of compassion. And again, I like to start with a quote. The Dalai Lama famously said at one point, "Be kind whenever possible. It is always possible." And that kind of reminds us that it is always possible to be compassionate, to be kinder than we might otherwise have thought. And that includes ourselves. I think there were times in my process, not only the physical part I was going through, but especially the emotional part, and feeling like, wow, this is a big change to pull away from a CEO job, an executive role. It's, are people going to be disappointed in me? Are they going to feel abandoned? How are they going to feel? There's a lot of emotional stuff. It was not at all an easy decision. It was months of heart-wrenching, reflection. But finally having compassion for myself and realizing what I had gone through is leading to something new. And I think compassion is such an important quality that is needed in life in general these days, especially for ourselves. And that relates to the next catalyst that we call the power of authenticity. On our CD, we've got, when you open the CD jacket, this quote jumps out. It says, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken." And it's an Oscar Wilde quote. And I love that. It's very disarming, isn't it? That why not be yourself? You can try being somebody else, but they're already being themselves. So why not be yourself? And it's kind of a humorous way to look at why being authentic, being yourself, being able to express who you really are is a vital part of this inspiration road that we're talking about. And the next one we call the power of wisdom. And Oprah Winfrey was a lovely quote where she said, "Turn your wounds into wisdom." And wisdom is, we could talk for hours just on wisdom too. And but I think to your point earlier, Alex, about did the C word prepare me for the next step? Yeah, but it didn't have to, right? Just like the acting career didn't necessarily prepare me for the years I went into the health and wellness field and then into HeartMath, but it did. So we still make choices, and either the life experiences turn into wisdom, or they turn into bitterness, right? So and resignation and a sense of what didn't happen. So allowing ourselves to learn from the past and grow into a new level is part of the goal and part of the journey. We talk about the seventh catalyst is the power of oneness, and just being able to, not in some purely idealistic sense, but those times, we've all had them on the beach, in a meditation, listening to great music, having a conversation with someone where you just were completely clicking with that person, and hours went by and you thought it was a half an hour. So oneness can be experienced in a moment in nature too, where you feel the barrier between you and the tree, the sky, the bird is gone. You're just in that experience. Most of us have had this, and I think we're especially in an age now where the power of how can we come together? How can we collaborate? How can we partner? How can we help each other instead of just being focused on me, but not forgetting me? Because if you forget me, then you can't be much of a we either, right? So I think that's a part of what we're talking about in this catalyst. Then the eighth one we talk of is the power of inspiration itself. And there's some lovely research done by a researcher back in the East Coast in Virginia named Jonathan Haidt, that talks about how when human beings are most alive and healthy, it's when we allow ourselves to feel inspired and moved. In other words, physiologically, there's feelings of feeling moved, feeling that there's real meaning in our life, feeling inspired by what we get to do or something that we experience in life, actually is the time when our bodies are the most alive and the most healthy. And so inspiration is, in our view, kind of the fuel for a thriving life, the ability to inspire ourselves in whatever way. And there were some great questions. I know we'll get to them shortly when we move into the question and answer period about, well, how do you do that when you have a diagnosis that's terrifying? How do you do that when your life circumstance is you're stuck in poverty? How do you do that when you're retired and the society is feeling you're sort of past being of much value? There are many challenges to this idea of just let's get inspired, right? So I do want to cover that when we get to the question and answer part. The ninth catalyst we call the power of embodiment. There's a lovely quote by Thomas Edison saying, "Great ideas originate in the muscles." And I thought, what an interesting concept. From somebody like Edison, you would have thought he would have said the brain or something other than the muscles, but he said the muscles. And again, to share a story, I met a young lady about 8 or 9 months ago who attended a program I was teaching at Stanford, and extremely fit. I mean, just like 2 hours every day of cardiovascular work and stretching, and just one of these incredibly fit people. And I was hanging out. I spent a little bit of time talking to her about how she got herself in shape, and turned out she had a very long, like a 10-year struggle with eating disorders. So this was not her nature to just be fit. Her nature was actually the opposite, to damage herself. But she had gotten into it, and very heavily into it, and really was thriving and really turned her life around. And what she had experienced in this process of really embodying the knowledge she had in her life was a transformation as well. And that inspired me because at that point, this was back in February of this year, I was feeling much better after, out of the woods with cancer, no staph infections. The hips were feeling much better. I was feeling stronger. I was starting to dance a little bit on weekends and get back into fuller exercise. And the experience of that young woman inspired me to say, you know what? If I don't go for it now and really get fit and really go for exercise, when would I do it? About to turn 60. In fact, I just turned 60 a month ago. If I don't do it now, am I going to do it when I'm 70? I don't think so. This was probably the best time to try it. And I did, and hired a personal trainer, joined a health club, started working out, got more into it. Long story short, I have found not only am I at the best level of physical fitness I've been at in probably 20, 25 years. That's not an exaggeration. That's really just the physical truth of my fitness now. But I found that the process of trying to embody, and even days when I didn't want to exercise, but doing it anyway, bursting through my comfort zone day after day, has led to that energy in other aspects of my life, or things that I didn't want to deal with, having the energy to get past the comfort zone that says, I don't want to deal with that, or get up off the couch when I feel like just, So the embodiment principle to me is really an important one, and I think for the listeners who have had many years in meditative practice, for example, or spiritual practice, often the embodiment part is the hardest part. You can have a great meditation, then you stand up and you engage your boss again, and it's out the window. So embodying it, keeping it alive, and this is where the HeartMath work, I think, is extremely valuable. Tools that keep us centered in the heart, even in the midst of an argument, in a tough meeting, in a challenging situation. So the embodiment part to me is really important. And even as long as I've practiced, adding this extra dimension of really going for another level of physical fitness has been almost like the icing on the cake for me, too. And the last catalyst we call the power of gratitude, because, what is there more important in life in certain ways than gratitude? As HeartMath has said for years, there are many definitions of appreciation, but one of my favorites is when you think of appreciation in a financial sense, it's when something grows in value. So anything we appreciate, anything we feel grateful for, tends to grow in value. As I appreciated my health and the hope in my life, I got more of it. As I appreciated nature, it gave me more inspiration. So gratitude is this untapped resource in most of us, or occasionally tapped resource in many of us, that can really affect our life in a positive way. So those are the catalysts that we talk about and what makes your heart sing. And I'm looking at the time, and I'm thinking that maybe it's a good segue now, first of all, just to see any comments, questions that you have, Alex, and then jump into some of the wonderful, extensive questions that we've already received.
Bruce, my mind is racing, and I have many thoughts. We need many calls. I think one per topic here. Presence, yes. Compassion, authenticity, wisdom, oneness, inspiration, embodiment, and gratitude. And I was reflecting on inspiration. I notice we're friends on Facebook, and you post these amazing photos, these images, and every time I see one, they do touch my heart, and I do find a place of inspiration. And I think through these different pillars, these different ideas, these essential catalysts, as you and Gary call them. And I wonder, if someone's to choose just one as a starting point, when their challenges in life feel insurmountable, they're depressed, they don't feel good about their physical body or their financial situation, is inspiration through exposure to beauty, things we find beautiful, be it music, art, nature, maybe one of the easier places for people to?
That's a great question. From my own experience, that was the one for me. Yes, beauty was the one for me, in appreciating beauty, and not just physical beauty, although, as I said earlier, I live in an amazing part of the world, the Santa Cruz Mountains of Central California, and it's a beautiful area pretty much all the time. And there's so much beauty around me, and I get to travel in often some very beautiful places, and there's beauty there. But beauty of a conversation, beauty in someone's eyes, beauty of music, beauty of the movement of a leaf as it falls to the ground. I mean, there's so many things that can be beautiful if you choose to look through those eyes. And I mean, the famous expression, "Beauty is in the eye of the beholder." And so, yes, I think the ability to be grateful. It's kind of hard to pick just one, but I think, in my view, and why we feel that inspiration is sort of at the heart of all of this, is that there are so many things we really can be inspired by. There is beauty in life, in expression, in humor, in all kinds of things, and try that one. But if that isn't the one that for whatever reason resonates for you as much, try playfulness. It may be that for some people, just the idea of being playful is the thing that cracks their heart open to another level of their own uniqueness and their own inner beauty. So I think, in a way, you could start kind of anywhere. I think gratitude and appreciation are incredibly powerful, because they can, again, lift us above the problem that we're in. It can give us a bigger perspective, a bigger view, expand our sense of self away from the smaller, more tense self to a bigger, more spacious, more gracious part of ourself. So we've talked a lot. Go ahead, Alice.
No. I just as I hear your words and I reflect, and I think how powerful any one of these catalysts can be in our life, and just the impact of presence, of being a good listener, and just what that alone can do for yourself, and those that you give time to. I think there's no greater gift than to be a good listener to someone, and it's such a powerful transformation where we focus on listening rather than speaking. And so much of the work that we do here at Advanced Brain Technologies is focused on helping to teach listening, and that power of presence can be an incredible gift to those in our life.
Absolutely. So shall I have some of these questions. Are we going to open it to live?
Yeah, I think what we'll do is there's a couple of the questions here that I'm seeing that are really speaking to me, and I'm sure yourself. And I'd like to dive into a couple of those, and then move live. Helen Wall asked a question about how to overcome sad and distressing circumstances within families to be able to seek and enjoy inspirational moments with a light heart. What suggestions do you have for Helen?
Well, I think, first of all, compassion for whatever the challenges are, whatever the sadnesses are. I think to be fully human, we have to allow ourselves to experience the fullness of what's going on. I mean, when my mother passed away, she'd had Alzheimer's for almost 10 years. In a way, we'd all said our goodbyes because she hadn't had any cognitive connection with us for a long, long time. And so we were sort of used to the fact that, our mom wasn't there anymore, even though she was still alive. And yet, when she finally passed, we still grieved. It wasn't like, we've already kind of gotten used to it. We still needed to feel and be honest about what we were really feeling. And I think that's an important step. And at the same time, that's not all that's gone on in the family. There have undoubtedly been happy moments and silly moments and fun moments. And I had a brother who had Lou Gehrig's disease, which is a horrific disease, and he passed away about 12 years ago. And after he passed, the rest of us brothers sat around and were laughing about him, about the funny things he had done over the years. And we knew that that's what he wanted us to be doing. He didn't want us, crying. And at that moment, he wanted us having a good time. That's what he would have been doing if he'd been one of us. So we felt like we were honoring him by being playful and enjoying the memory of him and the silly things that he did and the fun moments and the quirky things that he did and all that. And I'm not saying to rush into something like that either, because, as I just said, sometimes these things that happen need their time to heal. You can't just move through too quick and, let's put on a smiley face and everything's fine. It's all perfect, That can be too quick sometimes. And at the same time, having a light heart is hardly ever a problem. And if it's truly a light heart and not not humor at someone's expense. That there's quite a difference, isn't there, between just being lighthearted and say, hey, we'll get through this and it'll be our time. Who knows what you might say, but having a lighthearted approach at time to time can be just what a family needs to kind of laugh it over. And it's something that may not have been clear on that excerpt you played from the Sonic Sanctuaries CD, but one of the things that we say in there is the idea that as bad as our situation may be at any given time, as bad as our family may have it right now with the economy or tragedies or whatever, most of the time we could honestly say there's somebody on the planet that's got it worse. And maybe there's a lot of people that have it worse. And so sometimes that perspective alone is enough to kind of help us realize, yeah, this is awful. I wouldn't wish this on anybody. And yet, there are people, I had to say this to myself about my cancer. There were people with far scarier diagnoses than what I had. And so even though it was scary and it was uncomfortable and it was painful and it was all that it was, there were many moments I would say to myself, dude, it could be a lot worse than this. It really could be worse.
So, Bruce, be grateful for your cancer. You don't have it quite as bad as the next guy.
That's the way I needed to look at it at times. I really did. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, whatever gets you through. And I do think, you go back to being lighthearted, and laughter is just such a powerful tonic.
Yeah.
It really, truly is. Well, I would love, Bruce, as I'm sure you would, to open this up to some of our guests that are on the phone. So for all of you that are on the phone, we're going to open up to a live Q&A. And if you have a question that you'd like to ask of Bruce or a comment, all you need to do is go ahead and press *7 on your phone. That'll unmute you so that you can speak with Bruce. And then I'll ask when you finish up and ask your question or make your comment, go ahead and press *6. So I would like to open this up. So whoever would like to ask a question of or has a comment for Bruce, please press *7 on your phone right now. Okay, looks like we have Ginger, Kenny, and Everett, Washington. Ginger, what's your question or comment?
I have a question about service, Bruce. Where have you found service fits into this whole equation in terms of helping yourself, help others?
That's a great question. I recently read a study that was done saying, there's been lots of research now in the positive psychology field around happiness, and more examples of studies are saying how vital happiness is to us. And there was a new study that came out saying that actually when people have a sense of meaning in their life, that's even more powerful than just happiness. Happiness isn't necessarily as deep a feeling as meaning. And I'm connecting that to your question, Ginger, because I think oftentimes when people really are living in service of something beyond themselves, there is a sense of meaning that they gain from that. And that is tremendously inspiring, that you feel like you're doing something beyond just living a life yourself. And I think the challenge in service is, and I see this in healthcare all the time because I've not only been in healthcare as a patient a lot, but worked in healthcare professionally a lot for many years, working with many healthcare organizations around North America and the UK especially. And you see so many people who are in the service of others, not remembering to serve themselves. And so the issue of self-care is a huge gap in many people who are in the business of service or in the work of service. So I think, to me, to really be able to serve others, we need the personal inspiration, and we need to remember that to serve ourselves, our own needs at the same time, where we can't serve others and can't care for others as deeply and as meaningful as we might. Caregivers are famous for burning out because they're always thinking about others and not remembering to do the healthy things themselves or take the break they need or kind of good important things about life. So that's sort of an immediate response, Ginger, to your question. Is that helpful?
Ginger muted herself, but I think that was a phenomenal response. And I've 20 years working in the healthcare field myself, Bruce. I've watched all the therapists and allied healthcare practitioners that we work with so often just forget themselves in the equation. And the incidence of burnout in these professions are so high, and I think it's important for all of us to allow ourselves to take the oxygen mask first, because we need oxygen to help others to breathe.
Yeah. There's a question
crucial.
There's a question that popped out for me, and it was that was on the thing you sent ahead of time, Alex, and it's from a listener in Switzerland. And the question was Francis in Switzerland, and it says, at 70, is it too late to make the changes necessary to reduce chances of memory problems? And I think, while I didn't address memory specifically in this seminar, I wanted to address this because I think other people listening could be saying, well, maybe it's too late for me. I've had a stressful life for 60 years, 65 years, 70 years, or I've had so many health challenges, I can't really feel hope again or whatever. And I'm wanting people to challenge that and to say, no, it's not too late. And I think not only do I say that from an inspirational standpoint that, I had moments of, can I have a good life again? Can I have a healthy life again? Am I in a slow decline now at age 58? I had that thought a number of times. And but I want to say that no, that doesn't have to be the case at all. And in fact, the latest research, and I'm sure, Alex, your organization talks about this a lot, around neuroplasticity, that our brains are still creating neural circuits in our 70s and later. It's not too late. So even if there has been a decline of certain things, there's a fantastic book called Younger Next Year, which a friend of mine gave to me when I was starting my physical fitness kick around 6 or 8 months ago, and it helped to inspire me to take it to the next level, about all the research that's saying significant exercise, even into our 60s and 70s, can dramatically turn around the aging process way more than we would think. And that includes the impact exercise is having on the brain. So I just wanted, for those other listeners that are also thinking, well, maybe it's too late for me, because of my age or something that's happened in my life, don't accept that. Don't give in to that. I can't believe the things I'm doing with my body now, and I have 2 artificial hips that set off every alarm system in every airport in the world. The things that I'm doing with my body, my doctors can't believe. But it's happening. So, things really are possible. So I really want to encourage
they really are. And I don't think, whether it's a dietary change, it's weight loss, smoking cessation, alcoholism, drug abuse, whatever we've been doing that is, damaged our bodies, there is always a point to turn around and recover. And I think so often people get into a place that the odds just seem so insurmountable that they can make progress that it's hard to move forward. But, when you see examples, including yourself having gone through, the amount of challenge you did in the time you did to now be at your healthiest state in your life, I think is hugely inspiring. And there are just so many more stories out there that it's truly never too late for our heart or for our brain.
Exactly right.
Certainly,
well said.
Certainly. Well, Bruce, believe it or not, we've reached our hour this evening. I certainly have enjoyed this call and all of the questions that have been submitted. I think you were able to cover so much wonderful information tonight. For our listeners on the call right now, Bruce, for those that want to kind of follow what you and Gary are doing with What Makes Your Heart Sing, what's the best way for them to engage and get involved here with your mission?
Thank you for asking. Our website is called whatmakesyourheartsing.net, and on there you will see, the CD that we played the excerpt from, Sonic Sanctuaries, is available on there, as well as a range of other music that Gary has produced over the years. It's all beautiful and inspiring. And kind of current events programs we're doing. We have a concert coming up in San Francisco on September 26th for people in the Bay Area. They can learn about it at the whatmakesyourheartsing.net website. So that's probably the best way. People on Facebook, there's a Facebook page. We've got over 50,000 people now that are involved in that community on Facebook from literally all over the world. I think at least 40 countries are represented there. And, so that's the best way. Whatmakesyourheartsing.net gives you a pretty good breakdown of what we're up to, and videos and pictures and fun ways to engage.
Oh, and it's a beautiful site, and you've got really an exciting thing happening with that Facebook group too. So a lot of dynamic people there. So, and I just need to say a word about Gary Malkin, I met Gary a couple years ago at a conference in Connecticut, and was deeply touched by kind of his presence and his humility. And I think that really comes through in his music. He's very giving. So I'm really excited to be more engaged with this project and to follow what you're doing, because I think you're really a dynamic duo.
Thank you. Well, he is a genius, and I am his biggest fan, and I pinch myself when I realize I get to work with this guy. He's an amazing musician, amazing composer, and he really is everything you just said, Alex. I appreciate you bringing that up. And I do want to say, because so much of my last 25 years have been influenced by the HeartMath work, and Doc Childry especially, is to acknowledge them and their website, heartmath.com. It's great work. A lot of great tools, great programs, great technologies that have been developed there, and I encourage your listeners, if they don't know much about it yet, and there's a lot there, a lot to learn, a lot of research, a lot of great stuff, great tools. So, heartmath.com.
Certainly are, and many of our listening program providers actually integrate the HeartMath tools along with the advanced brain technology tools, and they can be a very gentle and powerful combination with each other. So we love to see this synergistic work happening. So thank you so much for sharing so much information with us tonight.
Thanks so much, Alec. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Bruce. Be well.
Thank you for listening to the Advanced Brain Podcast with best-selling author, keynote speaker, and founder of Advanced Brain Technologies, Alex Doman. In the show notes, you can find links to all the resources mentioned in this episode. Please subscribe to the podcast from whichever platform you might be listening in. Of course, it's free to subscribe, and it ensures that every time we post a new episode, you'll find it right there waiting for you to listen to in your podcast app of choice. And for more information regarding the world's most innovative neuroscience-based music programs for optimal human performance, please visit advancedbrain.com.